So we've always been told in Star Trek that Starfleet Academy is where the Federation's future was shaped. The cadets went there to learn, to grow, to prepare, and to face evaluation. And in the event that they failed, they did not move on. And then came the Kurtzman era. And instead of getting what we hoped to get from a show we were waiting for almost 30 years, a show where we hope to see the crews of tomorrow learn how to grow, experience discipline, strive towards excellence, well, we were given puerile behavior, emotional weakness instead of resilience, self absorption instead of service, trite, ham fisted Timu HR lectures, and really vibes instead of viable mentorship. And probably worst of all, we were given vulgarity instead of formality. And anytime you've objected to this across the board, access media, the shills, they give you the same response. It's for kids. You need to relax. They're reaching out for a younger audience. But when the TNG era started, I was in single digits. When DS9 started, I was a preteen. Throughout the entirety of Voyager, I was a teen. And when Enterprise started, I was just entering my 20s. And amazingly enough, these shows never lowered the bar when talking to a younger audience. Instead, they asked you to rise to the occasion, to go out there and learn why things like classic literature, classic music, art were so important. It challenged you to expand your horizons and to seek out knowledge. Knowledge which ultimately led you to love the show more. How many people were introduced to Beowulf for the first time? How many people were introduced to the story of Gilgamesh for the first time?
Enkidu, a wild man from the forest, entered the city. They fought in the temple. They fought in the streets. Gilgamesh defeated Enkidu. They became great friends. Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
See, when you lower expectations, the only thing that happens is you hide the fundamental problems of what is it you're presenting. You don't prepare to meet challenges head on. You're ill prepared for any tests that come ahead. And well, as Starfleet Academy faces its first real evaluation from the viewers, we've come to learn that it didn't even make the Nielsen board. In other words,
it stinks.
Just another Kurtzman turd sandwich. So let's talk about our receipts. A breakdown of the Nielsen charts from January 12th to January 18th, in other words, the show's premiere week, shows us something very telling. So in order to get into the Nielsen top 10, a show, well, frankly, the show, I think it was Runaway, took up the final number 10 slot. They managed to log 343 million minutes watched. That's the floor. That's your guaranteed admission to the room. That is the bare minimal amount of work you have to do to get a seat at the table. You want to appear on the chart? You need to earn 343 million minutes viewed. That's not cause for celebration. That is the BAM. BAM! Now, you may be asking yourself, what is the BAM?
Bam, 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 bam! Bam, 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 bam!
Well, the BAM is the bare ass minimum. And, well, because there wasn't enough natural excitement to guarantee turnout, Paramount Plus decided to run 2 episodes back to back. In other words, they tried to stack the runtime and give the numbers help. So when you run 2 different shows together as like a premiere movie, The Nielsen ratings will count it as one singular entity, not two separate ones. We've seen this done with The Acolyte, with well, essentially any and every Disney Plus major Marvel or Star Wars debut. It's done to feign excitement and to claim early success where it may not otherwise exist. So together, each episode would have had to have earned around 135 million minutes of watch time. Thankfully, Marv provided a breakdown of the formula.
Break it down.
So we are going to divide 343 million by 135 million, and you arrive at roughly 2.5 million complete watches needed. So, meaning both episodes, start to finish, just to be last place, 2.5 million people watching it from beginning to end in order to make it to the chart. And the reality is that Starfleet Academy failed to even do that. So, I guess really what we're talking about here is if the premiere couldn't even reach the floor, the reality says the climb is about to get a hell of a lot steeper from here. Why is week one everything? Well, because week one is maximum strength. The marketing is at its full blast. Curiosity is at its absolute peak. The core fans are ready to show up. After that, your attention gets divided. It starts to drift. The budgets move on, and confidence changes. See, we got to go back a couple weeks to talk about some data we already covered, but the premiere briefly went live on YouTube via Paramount Plus. So pay TV, giving you the premiere for free on YouTube. Before it was pulled from the public, the counter hovered around 200,000 views across 9 days and only a few thousand likes. Meanwhile, third-party trackers reported dislikes moving past 27,000, probably maxing at around 30,000 before the video went private. And so once it disappears, those numbers freeze. But what we were able to see captured the absolute temperature of the room. So now that we know that this show is in fact an unmitigated failure, right? Because we had outlets like Collider, the Mary Sue, the IGN telling us that even though the show failed to properly chart even on Paramount Plus's internal metrics, it debuted only at 3, which is not fantastic for a 60-year-old franchise and decades-long fan support. And then before we hit the 7-day mark, it was off of Paramount Plus's internal charts completely. So now we've got that. We've got it being absolutely humiliated on YouTube by Nerdrotic's Spock doll. And now we've seen it couldn't even make the Nielsen charts by hitting the bare minimum threshold of 2.5 million people watching it from beginning to end. So now that we know that the show has in fact failed, there is no room for outlets in the legacy media to tell us otherwise, right? They can't gaslight anymore. And we're sure we're going to finally acknowledge that the brand under Kurtzman's watchful eye has endured 10 years of failure. I mean, last year, we just saw Section 31 be so reviled that I think it's probably on a blacklist somewhere, and it'll probably never be seen or spoken of again. Star Trek Strange New Worlds, although we pretended that there was something close to success there, once you get past season 2 and can no longer watch the show in a vacuum, where you can say, yes, there were individual episodes that showed a lot of promise and maybe even were a little bit on the better than okay side. But since you've gotten past the conclusion of season 2, the show has been a train wreck. And its stars have taken to attacking everybody who moves who doesn't agree with them. Picard seasons 1 and 2 are laughably bad, absolutely reviled. Frankly, they were creative ripoffs of things that were significantly better, namely the ending of Mass Effect, Bicentennial Man. It was plagiarism at its absolute finest. And it took Terry Matalas and the return of the original TNG crew one more time to give it something that resembled a successful closeout. Shows like Star Trek Prodigy, which I don't think gets enough love, ultimately canceled twice across two different streaming services. What is it? Star Trek Lower Decks, although it did recover from its issues with season one and did give itself a nice conclusion, it also was canceled before it could hit its maximum potential. Star Trek Discovery, well, we all know the debacle that was Discovery and Mikey Spock. The only thing that we can say positive about is that it inspired an explosion of YouTube creators to come into the space and fight for our modern myths. So, after a decade of failure, the narrative is going to be pretty clear. Instead of assigning the blame where it belongs, at the feet of the creatives who helm it, it's going to be a task on it's going to be thrown onto the fans. We're going to be told that the show is enduring franchise fatigue, that interest has faded, the audience has moved on, the fans have left. However, that doesn't help me understand what keeps happening, because whenever William Shatner shows up, people seem to assemble, and it's not little tiny showings. It's at scale. Last year when the Roddenberry Archive released 765874, otherwise known as Unification, it offered fans a chance to see William Shatner's Kirk and Leonard Nimoy's Spock reconnect. An 8-minute short with no weekly campaign, no algorithmic shove. Well, it reached tens of millions of viewers because the recognition triggered participation. It reminded you of what you love about Star Trek. Just a few weeks ago, William Shatner becomes a viral story as a result of TMZ seeing him eat some cereal. And his posts outperform Starfleet Academy's YouTube metrics. Then, well, we get to the Super Bowl commercial, something that's become something of a cultural moment. So, before you get to the actual Super Bowl itself, February notes that before the event on YouTube alone, the commercial had garnered over 684,000 views almost immediately. Following the Super Bowl, observers have tracked across Instagram and Twitter that the commercial itself has hit 6 to 7 million views in wider engagement. And the Super Bowl itself was seen by tens of millions of people. The trades have celebrated the commercial as a triumph, pointing out that it was a mix of creativity and William Shatner's star power and fan appreciation that created the moment. So again, wherever the man appears, people respond. So if fans have truly abandoned Star Trek, why does the audience mobilize the second it sees the man most associated with it? Why does his legacy still summon enthusiasm? Why does the familiarity still convert to participation? Well, maybe it's because the fans didn't leave, right? Maybe it's because we're selective. Maybe it's because we know exactly what Star Trek is supposed to feel like and what this era does not give us. See, William Shatner at this point is James T. Kirk, and Kirk is William Shatner. They are inseparable. He understands this, and it's also why he has spent so much of his time protecting the franchise. He carries it with care, and in a way that other Star Trek actors outside of Leonard Nimoy have not done. If the brand was truly broken, wouldn't it be difficult for him to continue to grow more and more beloved? Yet here he is. And yet he absolutely does. And I would speculate it's because he embodies the qualities that people remember about Star Trek. confidence, courage, a commanding presence, and optimism. See, when he appears, the audience just doesn't see an actor. They see the promise of Star Trek, and they answer to it every single time. As the star of Star Trek, the original series, continues to shine, Starfleet Academy, well, it continues racing towards the final frontier of humiliation. The audience has spoken. The problem is not the brand. The problem is the brand's direction. And as the audience turns away from new Trek, well, they're begging for more Shat, which means they want what works. Duty, formality, optimism, discipline, and stories that continue to reflect our world and challenge us to do better, to strive for more, and to raise the bar. See, history is replete with warnings. Tomorrow isn't promised, and hubris always prepares you for the fall. The studios have forgotten that loyalty is not automatic. They've forgotten who they serve. And guess what? We've noticed. We are the customers. We are the investors. We are the engine that keep the franchises, the IPs moving, keep them viable, keep them alive. And these studios and their corporate creatives need to remember that they have to respect that. We can return something that no marketing campaign can buy: our time, our money, and our loyalty. Starfleet Academy has endured its first test, and it failed. It's failed Gene Roddenberry's vision. It's failed creatively. It's failed narratively. It's failed to be even moderately passable TV. And it's failed its fans.
Bam, 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 bam.
From the ink of the comics to the glow of the tube, every twist, every turn keeps us locked in the groove. TV's flashing neon, check the microphone. We're the speakers of subjects, the kings of the call. Raise the